That was so exciting. Good morning, church. How you guys doing? Something that I like to do in the youth group because it means everybody doesn't talk forever, but you still get a good gauge. Give me a thumbs up where you're at. Life ain't great, things are good, or somewhere in the middle. Oh, we got 2 thumbs up, shaking everywhere. It's good. Things seem to be good. That's awesome. You're still figuring it out, it seems. Whoa. Well, cool. If I haven't met you, my name is Mark. I'm the youth pastor here, and I get the honor of sharing with you guys my why church. I wanted to start off with a scene. I'm going to describe it to you here from one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie of all time, written from the best, or adapted into movies from the best trilogy of all time. Any guesses? Lord of the Rings. Whoever said Star Wars, I'll hold my tongue, but it's very clearly, it's Lord of the Rings. So my favorite of the 3 is The Two Towers. It's the one right in the middle. And there's a reason for that. There is a dialogue between the 2 main heroes of the story, Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee. If you're unfamiliar with the story, and the man who wrote it, J.R.R. Tolkien, this ring was a representation for sin, or close to. In this one scene, Frodo is tempted to put this one ring on, to participate with the enemy. And as he's about to, one of these big dragons called a Nazgul come, and he's about to attack him. But he's kind of in a trance. And his best friend, his gardener, his ally, Samwise Gamgee, tackles him out of it. They fall down some stairs, and Frodo's kind of in this trance. And this scene is the only scene that I will consistently cry on every single time I watch it, which is every fall. So I'm due for a good cry coming up here shortly. Now let me tell you this dialogue. Something that I encourage the students to do is I encourage them to take a posture of however or whatever they can internalize it best. So if that for you is closing your eyes or whatever, I encourage you to do that. But let me read this to you. Frodo says, "I can't do this, Sam. I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. That meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. Because they were holding on to something. What were they holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. I'm going to come back to that, I promise you. But as I wrestled with this question, why church? That was an incredibly pivotal quote for me. And it's going to be woven throughout this message. So I figured understanding it could be helpful. I want to be honest with you guys. This question, why church, has been incredibly, incredibly challenging for me. I went on a sabbatical towards the end of July to the end of August, and when I returned, I heard we were doing this series, Why Church? 3 pastors, 3 perspectives to share your why. And even when I got to sit down and really write down this sermon on Monday, this past Monday, I was still wrestling with it. I had given myself a month just to think and sit, and I was still wrestling. And the reason with that kind of starts back to when I was a newcomer in this world. I grew up and my mom was the nursery director at my church, and our church had about 3 services. So since my mom worked in the nursery, that meant I helped in the nursery for 2 services and I attended 1. But I also enjoyed it, to be fair. That's where my friends were, and it was fun. But that structure existed, and I was expected to attend church. And then when I was 18, I graduated, and I went to Corbin University, where it was also an expectation that you would attend a church somewhere. So right when I turned 18, I got connected with a local church, got connected with their youth ministry, and started serving. And then when I turned 20, so a couple years after that, I got hired here at Court Street, where obviously part of my job is to be here, because Sundays and church kind of go hand in hand. So my whole life, I've either been told to attend, expected to, or it was part of my job. So answering this question for myself, the why church, has been really difficult. It hasn't been something that I've ever thought about, my why. It became just something you do, an expectation. It's Sunday. Get up a little bit earlier, put on your nice clothes, and go to church. But in the middle of that story, though, there was a very pivotal moment for me. It was when I was deciding what I wanted to do after high school. I did all right at track, and I had a few knowing what it was. Something was at work inside of me. Something deeper was moving. And there was and is a goodness that exists within the people of the church, the ones that are saying, I want to follow Jesus, and that was something I wanted to be a part of. So in a very logical sense, as I was thinking about this decision, who I was at church with church friends or church activities brought out a goodness inside of me. I liked that. I liked that mark, and I wanted to keep it. So I chose to continue in this goodness. In a way, by re-examining my personal story, I had found my why church. That there's a goodness here, and by being here, I get to be a part of it. That there's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. And I get to do that here. There's a lot of things that bring out the ugliness in me, as I'm sure you guys all have things that bring out the ugliness in you. And as I was thinking about what is some of this ugliness that comes out in me, a big one is traffic. Anybody else get a little ugly during traffic? Okay, the 4 of you that were honest, super appreciate it. The rest of you. Or when somebody's going like 10 miles an hour below the speed limit for seemingly no reason. I love you, Josh, but man, that is tough. I'm like looking around, it's like, is there a squirrel in the road? There's no reason. They're just sightseeing, I get it. Would I forget the login or password to some internet site that I need to get into, like FAFSA loans or whatnot, and I just forget my login? And they say don't use your same password for everything, but it's so much easier when you do, because I forget them all. I get super hot and sweaty. Often Erica will come home, and I'm just like shirtless on my computer, and she's like, oh, you're trying to log into something? I'm like, yeah, it's just not working. Getting stung by wasps, that sucks. I don't like that either. There's a week this summer that I got stung every day. Every day I got stung. And each time I learned too, okay, I was barefoot, I'm gonna put on shoes. And then they go for my back. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear a shirt. And they're like, I'm gonna go for your arm. It was an awful week. I'm getting really passionate about this. And this one's probably one of the worst ones. When you really have to go to the restroom in public and every bathroom has a code on it that only like one person in the stores know, and they tell you got to go meet Frank in the poncho down the street, and he'll tell you the code, and you got to be there in 30 seconds or it's going to change. That brings out the ugliness inside of me. And obviously those are silly but very true examples. But we can clearly see some of this ugliness that has come out inside of us over the past 5 to 10 years. And I see this primarily in division, whether that be on politics or religion or fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what it is. People disagree. But there are some things that bring out the good inside of us. One of the goods that I've consistently seen and been able to be a part of is the church. Seeing all different people coming together under one name and one reason is beautiful. Even looking out to you guys, you look different, you dress different, but we're all here for one thing. That's beautiful. 2 Corinthians 12:12 says this: "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ." All different parts, but one. Part of my why church is I get to partner with something bigger than myself. When I believe I just turned 16, I went over to Eastern Europe in Serbia. I spent part of the summer there. I ended up spending somewhere between 4 and 5 summers. Thank you, Erica. 5 summers in Serbia. I just ended up falling in love with the place, the people, all of it. I remember the first time I was there, though, it was my first time out of the country, and I had to get a passport, the whole bit. And I remember it was wild because I had never been on a plane before, and the first plane I had gone on was the longest commercial flight you could get on. I think it was like 17 and a half hours. And even then, I was 6'4", and they put me in the middle aisle, in the middle seat. And it was probably the worst 17 hours of my life. It was awful. And I remember going into Serbia, and I remember thinking, like, I'm going to show Jesus to these people. I'm going to be the one to do it. Very misunderstood 16-year-old. Very confused. No idea what I was getting into. I show up, and we visited a cathedral in Belgrade. It had just been completed over like 150 years of construction. And we walk in, and there's just hundreds of people worshiping. And they're speaking Serbski, a language I didn't and don't really know. And all of a sudden, it kind of hit me. I'm a small part of this big thing that exists. Something is going on without my knowledge of it. These people are worshiping the same God that I am, thousands of miles apart. And all of a sudden, that perspective started to grow a little bit. And I was entranced by it. So I went back the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And then I got married, and I brought my wife, and we went. And so Serbia has a very special place in my heart, because this is where I started to see there's something bigger here that I am now a part of. And then visiting other countries, went to Ethiopia. All of a sudden you see this thing is existing everywhere, and I get to participate in this. That's amazing. I've always found it so strange, and if this is you, I get it now, but I didn't at first. I've always found it so strange when people talk about their favorite professional or collegiate teams, and they say, "We won the other day." I'm like, you had no part in that. You can barely run 20 yards. You were nowhere near the field. And I remember I would scoff at that in my head. That's just silly. You're just goofy. And then I really started to sit with it. And it started to hit. We all want to be a part of something. And sports teams do a perfect example of this. You feel like you're a part of it. You are a part of it. You're looking at who's being traded and who's staying, who's going, all of that. It gives us a sense of belonging and purpose greater than ourselves. A recent MIT study found we crave interactions in the same region of our brains where we crave food. Another study showed we experience social exclusion in the same region of our brain where we experience physical pain. A similar vein, a study at the University of Michigan found when people lack a sense of belonging, it is a strong predictor of depression. There are things going on up here that people are understanding, but we're still kind of just on the cusp of kind of figuring this stuff out. Or maybe someone like Jesus knew this thousands of years ago. These things have existed long before us and it will long after us, is that we desire to be a part of something. One of the things where, at least for me, I'm trying to kind of troubleshoot is when students graduate from high school and they go on into college. That can be a pretty tough transition. Youth group, we're very close-knit. We do a lot of stuff together. And then they go off to another college, another city, a new place, and it can be difficult because they were a part of something. These studies also stated that the desire to belong or to be a part of something is a basic human need, right up there next to food and water. It belongs in all of us. They've even intentionally designed social media to function this way, to play off our need to belong. It allows us to monitor others and, this is interesting, to be monitored by others. Part of the desire to belong includes being monitored by others. Whether we like that or not, it's a part of it. And that all plays into our need to belong or to be a part of something. To be a part of something. I believe church hits this need at an intrinsic level. We come, we put aside our differences, and we move towards a common goal. We become a part of something bigger than ourselves. Every week, every Sunday morning, when I walk through those doors, I am tagging my name to what this place stands for, as are you, what it represents, for what it's existed as since the beginning, both good and bad. Church gives me a sense of belonging and allows me to be a part of something bigger than myself. There's a lot of good things in this world, but one of the most powerful goods I've seen is church. And when I say church, I most definitely mean Court Street, but I also mean church, the global sense, the eternal sense of the word church. Those who came before us, those who will come after, those worshiping down in Peru or over in Europe right now. God's goodness through this place brings out the best in me, as it does you. When Jesus walked on this earth, he was the embodiment of this goodness and spoke of it while speaking at the Sermon on the Mount, which is Matthew. I'm going to be looking at Matthew 6:14 through 16. It says this: "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they set it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Sometimes when I read Jesus' words, it's really easy to disassociate myself from the words he spoke to me in 2023. It's really easy to open up the Bible and say, wow, that's cool, he said that to those people so long ago. Don't know what that does to me, bye. And I put it away. This is one of those moments that I want it to hit, that we are this light. This is Jesus speaking to us as the church and saying that you are the light of the world. You, right now, when you leave church and you go out to eat, or you go home, or you get gas, you go to Costco, the typical after Sunday church thing to do, you are the light of the world. He's imploring his followers to let the goodness shine to others. This is the church, a lamp in a time of darkness. Every week, I get the joy to see the students here, as I am the youth pastor, be that light to others. It's a way that I get to participate in this goodness. It's a way that I get to fight for that goodness, as Sam said. One of the reasons why I wanted to be youth pastor was that I get to see this firsthand. I get to see the changes happen. I see the light bulbs click. I get to watch them and help them and then make these decisions to follow Jesus. And I've gotten to be a part of it for some time now. This is my 9th year in this youth group. I looked up the average length for a youth pastor, and it's 18 months. And this is by no means to pat my own back or say that I've cracked the code of youth ministry. I do not believe I have. But I have found through this duration, you get to see some of that light shining through, as Sam said. One of the things I've noticed, I think most of all, in youth ministry, there's a lot of desire to have the right messages or the right curriculum or the right this or that, and I agree that that is all incredibly important. One of the things that I have found to be the most powerful to youth by far, and I think this goes across the board to every age, is just being consistent. That's it. I don't have the best messages. I have to apologize often to the students, but I show up. I'm there every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Sunday. I'm there. The sad reality of it is that sometimes I'm more involved and more consistent than some of their own parents. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. That's not a dig on anyone. That's just the reality. And by this consistency, I get to see these life-changing decisions being made in these students' lives. Some of the good that I am fighting for is the youth. There's a lot of disparity over the next generation, Gen Z. I'm sure you see it all over the news, as there was for my generation, millennial. But I want you guys to know that there is a lot of goodness in these students. There's a lot to be excited for. What I love about these kids is that they are not afraid to ask tough questions. They quite super haven't learned like social interaction stuff, like when to ask the tough questions, but they ask them. And they're challenging me of what it looks like to love unconditionally. And not the unconditionally that was my understanding growing up, but actually unconditional, beyond race or gender or politics or looks, to love unconditionally. This past summer, I got the honor of seeing this good come out of 2 of our seniors before they leave the youth group and go into the real world. And here's a picture of that. On the left here is Andrew Evans, and on the right is Zach Lopez. What I love about these guys, they did something pretty similar. I don't know if they planned it. Zach, maybe I'll ask you later. Is that their decisions to get baptized were both kind of on a whim. And I loved that. It reminds me of the story of the Ethiopian. When he heard the story of the gospel, pretty quickly was just like, all right, where's water? Where can I get dunked? When these guys were ready to make the decision, they were ready to make the decision. And I love, too, that they're both seniors. They've been in the youth group for a while, but it took them a minute to make the decision. I love that. I encourage that. If a student is passionate and they want to get dunked right there, absolutely. We'll go through some steps, we'll talk about it, make sure they know what they're doing, But when a student like this takes that time and really makes sure that this is a decision they want to make, and they're asking the tough questions, both of these young men would ask questions that I was like, oh no, I don't know, man. Here's a Bible. I don't know. But then we got to work through it together. I also, about a month ago, I got to marry a couple students who attended the youth group when they were in high school. This is Aiden and Lainey Tilner. I got to see them attend. I've known Aiden for a long time, but I got to see them kind of fall in love and then pursue marriage, and I got to kind of see this play out. And they decided that they want to get married with Jesus at the center of it. These are just a few examples of students who are also in the discovering the why church. And part of me fighting for that good is getting to be there for it, whatever that looks like. Most often, it just looks like showing up. Not some crazy words of wisdom that are just wild and perfect. It's just being there, playing ping pong every week, beating them in dodgeball, the necessary things. But youth ministry can honestly be really difficult. A lot of you chose to be here this morning, and that's awesome. A lot of the youth don't choose to be here. A lot of the youth are forced to be here. And this isn't commentary on if that's right or wrong. That's not my place. But dealing with some of these kids when they don't want to be here is challenging. So a lot of it does just look like sitting there, asking them a question. They don't want to talk. Cool. You want to sit on your phone in the back? That's all right. That's completely okay. But know that you are welcome here. But when I get to encounter, or I do encounter a student who is struggling, whether they want to be here or not, I get to be someone who shows them that there is good and it is worth fighting for, even if they don't feel it. I say these things to show that this is how I fight for this goodness, being here for these youth, just showing up. And to be honest with you guys, it hasn't always been easy. There have been some pretty difficult times here at church. With COVID and transitions, there were times that being here sometimes was difficult. During that time, I had difficulty knowing or discovering my why. To be honest, the wind was taken out of my sails for a moment in time. The why that I grew up with was no longer a valid reason. The why, as in you're expected to or you're told to, wasn't doing it for me. I had to find a new one. But what I realized is standing up for what is right and good has always been inside of me. And being here is a place I can live out that why. And when I say standing up for what's right and good, I primarily mean loving people and loving Jesus. During that difficult time, what kept me coming back was that I had an opportunity to show others that there is good in this world, even if they feel like there isn't good in this world, and that it is worth fighting for. As I end here, something that I've recently been leaning into in my story is actually being thankful that I haven't had to make that decision for myself, the why church. I've had a lot of structure throughout my life that told me my why. And I'm not upset about that. I'm honestly thankful for that structure. It worked well for me. But living in a hyper-individualistic society made me skeptical and uneasy of the fact that I didn't feel like I didn't have my own why. I felt like I had to have one. Where is it? But in actuality, I have found that it was always inside of me. So, to finish this, to answer this question, why church? For me, it's because there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for another week that we can come together, and even as we wear these name tags, we're still a part of something bigger than ourselves, part of a common good. We're still individual, but we are also a part of something much bigger than ourselves. And that in and of itself is beautiful. There's a sense of belonging that when we walk through these doors, that we are tagging our name to who you are. That we are partnering with churches down the street, in another state, another country, another continent, as we worship your name. Lord, we decided maybe we've been in a tradition that we're thankful for, that told us our why, but we can also step into learning our own why. Lord, thank you for a time of worship where we can sing the same words in unison to glorify you. Thank you for this morning. In your name, amen. You guys are dismissed.
In every season, you keep repeating promises to me.